Welcome to Center Stage, the documentary podcast. Each week, our group of intrepid researchers and music archivists dig through the record crates of the world, looking for that one artist to take center stage. Using a patent-pending algorithm and spirited debate, we pick one artist. Once that is settled, we invite that artist into Thunderlove Studio to chat with your host Keith R. Higgins. When we're lucky, they say yes. Our mission with Center Stage is simple: to make sure the recorded work of artists remains, or in some cases lands on, the cultural radar. We invite you to sit back and relax. Thank you for joining us.
Days Between Stations is a partnership between guitarist Sepand Samzadeh and keyboardist Oscar Fuentes. Whether you call it art rock or post-progressive, over the course of 3 albums, the duo has created a sound that is uniquely their own. With a fan base and contributions that include members of Yes and XTC, Days Between Stations has built up a legion of credibility. With the release of their 4th album, Perpetual Motion Machines, Sepand and Oscar are set to cement their status as progressive rock torchbearers. The duo stopped by Thunderlove Studio to discuss their career. Here is my conversation with Days Between Stations.
Since you're supreme, Oscar, go first.
Yes. How did you guys meet?
That's interesting. So it was way back in the midst of time, back in 2003, and I was coming off of a string of bands that had all gotten right to the point where we were almost gonna get signed or something, and then they would always implode due to typical band things, addictions and infighting and stuff like that. And in 2003, I was leafing through the Music Connection magazine, which is, well, just what it sounds like, Music Connection, local magazine here in LA. There was a post in there from guitarists looking for musicians to record a concept album. And it said the list of influences, it said Pink Floyd. Always reminds upon it said Neil Young. He says it didn't, but and, and it said Radiohead, Nirvana. It said Sonic Youth. So I thought, okay, this sounds interesting, So I responded, and we made plans to meet at a pub in LA that's an English pub called. There's a lot of English expats there. It's called, I think, the Cat and Fiddle or the Pig and the Whistle. Or
Pig and Whistle?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. All right.
Yeah. And we met there. We had Scotch eggs and probably Guinness or something. If it's up to me, there's always a Guinness involved. But
Good man.
And then we would just talk about music. And we seemed to hit it off, and at the time I was having some issues with my playing, and like I said, I just come off of a few bands that had kind of imploded. So I thought, okay, let's give this a try. Let's check it out. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, it is. I remember I was waiting for you outside the pub, and I think you were like 30, 40 minutes late because you lived like what 2 hours from there, right? And I was about to walk, and I decided to stay another 5 minutes, and it's just it's amazing how that.
Well, everything you got to add 45 minutes.
Yeah, and he was the only one that responded to my ad.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Now, the name of the group is based on the American writer Steve Erickson's debut novel, Days Between Stations. Help us connect the dots between the band and the novel. Are you guys Steve Erickson fans? Is that how that came to be?
I'm a huge fan. It was back in maybe 94. I was in college, and I went to a used bookstore called Brindle's in Tustin, California. And I used to always buy 4 or 5 books at a time, and bought Steve Erickson's Days Between Stations. Later on, I realized it was like $5 or something used, trade paperback. And later on, I realized it had a signature on it, which was kind of interesting. Which, they hadn't realized. And, he wasn't like the biggest writer in the world. But I was just blown away by it. And one of the things that I admire about Steve Erickson is, it's sort of similar to Prog. Like there's a lot of different genres in there. Mm-hmm. And, there's a little bit of science fiction. There's, even though I don't think, most people would categorize it as science fiction. Surrealist, almost magic realism.
Yeah.
And, I think where we get in trouble is it's a notoriously difficult book to summarize. I mean, you can kind of summarize the plot a little bit. But recently I've been reading a writer called Ian McGilchrist, who wrote, what was the first book he wrote? Well, he's famous for The Master and His Emissary and The Matter with Things. But he also wrote one, I think it was called Against Criticism. And I studied literature in college. And so I can come at things from that more analytical left hemisphere view. But I think it's sort of a mistake in a ways, in ways to try to put a neat bow on everything and summarize plots and so on. So whenever people ask me, well, what's it about? I'm like, you just got to read it. I mean, it's what it's about. It's the experience, but it is,
Yeah.
And have you read it?
This stuff. So I bought the book, and at the first read, I was like, what the hell is this?
That was my reaction when I tried to read Steve Erickson.
Yeah. And then I went at it again. I had to take a break because it offended me in a sense that, my ego couldn't handle not understanding it. Then I was like, why don't you just enjoy a page or two at a time? And that's what I did. And I was like, oh, I'm reading Dali, But the word was very powerful because we chose the name for the band before I read the book.
Okay.
And I took it as a existential thing where you're always in transformation, right? And it's like you get to something, a post in your life, and you realize that it's fleeting, and then you're journeying to another part of your life, and you're always traveling. That's the vibe it gave me.
Okay.
And it meant different things to other people. On the debut, we called Oscar's during the recording of Intermission 1. We called Oscar's wife, and she woke up from a nap, and right away I just kind of said, "What do you think this name means?" And she was a little bit obviously she woke up and she said her own interpretation, and it's on the record. It's beautiful.
life, how it's like you have one period of your life and you have another period of your life, and then there's days in between those periods. It's like you're going through that journey to that next period.
Are there any other works or writers that you draw inspiration from?
Oof, yes. For myself, I read a lot of philosophy, and sometimes, well, I kind of read all over the place, but Faulkner is kind of an influence, especially the sort of disjointed narrative like that you get in Sound and the Fury. And I've tried that in lyric writing. One of the songs that I originally wrote the lyrics for was The Man Who Died Two Times from our second album.
Mm-hmm.
And that one was based on a Mexican folk tale. I had a book of Mexican horror folk tales, and it was about a guy meeting his own ghost, which I thought just that concept, just that idea alone is super interesting. Of course, a lot of these sort of complicated ideas, once I bring it to the band, in that case it was Sepand and Billy Sherwood who helped us co-write the lyrics for that. And he was going to be singing it, so he's like, I got to be able to sing this, and got to be able to kind of own it, And so a lot of the kind of complicated concepts kind of get simplified a bit for lyric writing. But no, I would say I really like Jonathan Carroll. It's another writer I like. Faulkner for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I do like the magic realists, Carlos Fuentes, Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I think Sepand's got his own kind of list there.
Yeah, just existentialism, philosophy, Kierkegaard, Sartre, a lot of the Hemingway, Old Man and Sea. I mean, all those things are just. I mean, just reading the Old Man and Sea is just music.
It really is.
Struggle with the fish and going back and figuring out. Sorry, spoiler alert, folks. Figuring out that the fish was eaten by sharks. I mean, that's right up our alley.
Just don't say what happened at the end of The Sixth Sense.
No, right? The way Hemingway can constrain so much in so few words, and so his compactness, for lack of a better word,
But it's
really impossible.
It's got to beat. It's got to pulse.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
For sure.
that's very.
That's actually.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that's actually sort of what happens with, for example, with The Man Who Died Two Times. We would have sessions, sort of campfire sessions, at the studio talking about the meaning of it, and I'd be going into quantum physics and metaphysics and stuff, and I think Hemingway's iceberg principle sort of applies, where you're only showing 10%, and the rest is submerged, and I think that gives you a little like depth.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, Hemingway's a big one also for me.
Now, in my research, I've read that your music has been described as progressive, post-progressive, instrumental, post-rock, ambient, etc. I would throw a cinematic into it as well. And I'm curious to know each of your views on how you view your music. Sepand?
Wow. I'm worried about the answer I'm about to give you. I don't listen to music.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not, at some point, just something happened, and this is the past 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was 14, fully into Guns N' Roses, Megadeth, Metallica, some guy named Kurt Cobain came along and just wiped them all out.
Can I interject for one? I was driving back from Florida and I was listening to Van Halen 1.
Yeah. Oh.
And it suddenly dawned on me as I'm listening to that album, and I'm of the grunge generation as well. It suddenly hit me only recently in the past week and I liked Nevermind, but the tectonic shift in music that they provided never really hit me until just this past week.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful to experience that, because what happened was, like, with me on the 2007 when the album started coming out and we were getting reviews, they were like comparing us to King Crimson and Pink Floyd and Genesis, right? So I'm like, who the hell are these guys? So I'm listening to them. I'm like, holy shit. Like, we're not even a sweat on their testicles.
Right.
They're amazing. And at 35, 36, I began enjoying prog. Like, I heard Shine On You Crazy Diamond at 36. And I was like, oh my Lord, what have I been missing? So, but at some point, and I don't know what happened, I just stopped. Not that I don't listen to music at all. I just don't go out to buy records or listen to this album or that new album.
It's not an active engagement for you.
It's not an active engagement. And I'll never forget the debut. We're working on a song called How to Seduce a Ghost. Mm-hmm. And Oscar looks at me and he goes solo. And I was so confused by what he meant.
Wow.
So there was a lot, there's a lot of push and pull between the two of us. And I really had struggle with the solo. So for me, I try to have a dialogue, like lyrically, like there's a call and response. So it makes sense to me. Otherwise, I don't get the bravado stuff. I'm not putting it down. I just don't get it.
Okay. Oscar, how about you?
I grew up listening to a wide variety of things. Got into prog pretty early on. I listened to, I think the first thing I was listening to was the Beatles, right? Oh. And just, which is a great introduction. But my parents used to play me their records when I was little, and my mom would be holding me in her arms, and she'd be playing like Wayne Newton and Perry Como and stuff. And they said that when the record would end, I would like wake up and go like this, like turn it over. So I've always loved music, and then got into the Beatles pretty massively.
I don't know why he keeps dropping.
Can you hear me?
Oh, I can. Yep.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
We lost you you got into the Beatles pretty massively.
Okay, so they re-released the Beatles films when I was maybe 7 or 8 years old, right? In the movie theaters in Mexico City where I was born and raised in Mexico City. Okay, I dropped for a little bit there, and so I went to see like Let It Be, Hard Day's Night, Help, Yellow Submarine, all of it, and massively got into the Beatles. And I consider the Beatles pretty progressive. You know, I mean, they kind of went everywhere in every direction musically, and to me, that's what progressive means. It means you give yourself freedom to explore any style, any genre. I was massively into, Yes, Marillion, early on, Genesis, Jethro Tull, etc. But at the same time, I was always into Thelonious Monk and Duke Ellington, Miles Davis. Coltrane is a big one. So to me, I see a band like Radiohead as being progressive in the sense of they don't sound like 1975, but they're very progressive. They're kind of going wherever the muse takes them and exploring different genres, different styles, different forms and stuff. I don't know why I keep dropping there. Sorry about that. Maybe we have a.
You're not dropping.
You're not dropping now.
Oh, okay.
There. Yeah.
You guys kind of disappear every couple of seconds.
I'm sorry.
But, no. I think what we were worried about initially, and what I think, happens sometimes is as soon as people hear Hammond organ and a mini Moog, they think, 1974, and well, then so be it, right? So I think, I want to have the entire arsenal of musical instruments from any decade available to us. And, we have a lot of influences that are not from classic progressive rock,
Sure.
from the first waves, so to speak. And I think those come out in our music as well, but, I guess it's not our job to point out necessarily like, well, but this is this and that,
No.
But I have said to people, like, well, Man Who Died 2 Times is as much Ultravox or something as it is, Genesis or something.
YouTube,
but
Marillion is a name that
they
don't get name checked very often, so it's nice to hear that.
Oh, I love them.
Yeah.
In fact, the little story behind that. So I was listening at the time to sort of on repeat. I had a little Walkman cassette player, and my brother had given me. This is kind of a weird comment. Well, first I listened to Three Sides Live, and I was just obsessed with it. And then I was listening to the Genesis album, with Mama and Home by the Sea.
Right.
And he gave me Selling England, on a burnt cassette. And so I was just nonstop listening to those 3 albums. And then my sister's boyfriend said, like, well, if you like all that, you're going to love this. And he gave me a cassette of Script for a Jester's Tear, which had just come out. I wish I still had that too. It was a Mexican-made, I guess Mexico, EMI Mexico.
Nice.
Wow.
Script for Jester's Tear. And I put that on and I went like, oh my God, this is great. And so I was, right from the get-go, I guess, huge fan of Marillion. And still am.
When you think about composing a new piece of music, do you guys have a specific approach or mood in mind, or does it sort of evolve organically?
Wow.
Should I go real quick?
Yeah.
I think we have different approaches, which is I tend to just kind of play and see where it leads. And sometimes I have like a scale in mind, or I like dissonance a lot. So, I'll go like, okay, this, little riff or progression that I came up with seems to be playing with the Lydian thing, or we did one thing with a Hungarian scale that we still have to go back to. But whereas I think Sepand a lot of times like imagines things, so he works kind of conceptually first sometimes, and stop me if I'm wrong, but so on the first album in particular, like I would have maybe a pre-existing piece, and Sepand would go like, maybe we could do this and that, and then I would go like, dude, you're crazy. Those styles don't match. and then they're like, okay, challenge, accept it, kind of thing, you know. So I think that would be like, I would say for myself, I'm more a sit down and play guy, you know,
organically.
But what do you think, Sepand?
No, I agree with you. I don't think we have a set formula. It's kind of how we're feeling, and you nailed it, Keith. We're very cinematic.
Yeah.
And that's really important. So, you know, I look at, for example, Requiem for the Living, which was the first song on the debut, and that's the one Oscar was talking about when he said, "Are you crazy?" To me, I mean, it's simple. What are the instruments that give you the most mood? It's strings for me.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do strings. And then, so, you know, we don't really put caps on stuff. We really like to explore. And I find, because, like, you know, I love pop songs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, let's see, you know, Jenny Was a Friend of Mine by The Killers. You know, I'll play that every day for a month, then it's gone forever. So I try to look for companionship as much as possible. And, you know, like Pink Floyd, The Wall, I mean, that's still with me to this age. And it changes every time. So I kind of like to keep things in different layers. So as we're developing, it has more, you know, resonance, and it stays with us. We don't get tired of it.
What impacted working with artists like Yes's Rick Wakeman and Tony Levin, the Bassmaster General, right? And XTC's Colin Moulding. How did that impact your approach to music? Or did it? I see Sepand smiling. I don't.
Well, I love your questions. They're profound. There was a waking call. I'll never forget. After Billy had all the artists you mentioned, we were sitting in his room. He finished mixing the In Extremis album, the second album, and I was listening to that, and my soul just peeled away from me. Like I was listening to some other band that I didn't know. Like, you know, I was like, holy shit. Right? Like I was like, it like the fact that these guys are on the record, like us, like that was whiplash.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I always say is that, because, but you know, these guys were my heroes growing up, and so it's kind of like seeing your action figures come to life.
Yeah.
Oh shit. So it's pretty amazing. But I think within Extremis, mostly the music was done, right? And we had, in the case of Peter Banks, we just kind of leave him room to do whatever. But you know, when Rick Wakeman, well, it's similar sort of thing. When Rick Wakeman came in and Colin, the songs were pretty much done, so it was just matter of letting them do their thing. And then Tony just, oh my God, he's just amazing, you know. And it's interesting because when we were writing the album, we were working on the song Visionary, and Sepand asked me, like, what do you hear on this for bass? And I go, well, I hear Tony Levin on stick. You know, just throwing it out there, you know,
right.
It's not going to happen. How could that happen?
I'm a go-getter.
And so I'm like,
dude, he wrote back. He wrote back.
hey, what?
I said, I remember calling. He wrote back. He wrote back.
Yeah, I do that every artist I pitch. It's like, well, there are three scenarios. They say yes, they ignore me, or they say no.
And if you didn't contact them, you already failed.
Correct.
Right?
100% correct.
So this thing about, I don't know about releasing my work, I'm worried about this or that, you've already failed. Just release it. Do the best you can. Keith, if I may, I've never talked about this. I've been embarrassed, but when you're playing with these icons, for me, there was a little bit of insecurity, right? As I mentioned to you, I'm from Kurt Cobain land. So now I got the Cape Crusader. I got right. I got Peter Banks, who farts out notes like it's nothing, right? I mean, that guy was awake on a boat. I mean, early Yes stuff. Holy crap, right?
Yeah.
So I practiced like 9 hours a day.
Wow.
And this is something I've never talked about. But my fear of underperforming and letting them down was overwhelming. And I practiced so much, and I tried to be so much of a shredder that I kind of defied who I am.
Interesting.
So I started getting away a little bit from actually feeling a little bit not connected to the music, my own music with Oscar.
Interesting.
Yeah. So kind of like, and that proceeded through Giants, the third album.
Mm-hmm.
And it was until this album, Oscar just sent me a song called Being, which Durga McBroom is on.
Yep.
And he, not that he left it on purpose, but he left a 2.5 minute space, right? And I challenged myself and I said, look, no shredding. How do you keep someone entertained for 2.5 minutes? And I playing a solo. And I really, really struggled to get back to myself and not to be ashamed of it. I don't play fast. What do they call them? Slow hands. Right. And when you look at like masters like Gilmour, I mean, my God, that guy holds your attention, gives you just butterflies when he plays.
Yeah. So were you able to find yourself again?
Slowly, yeah.
Good.
Yeah, and I'm speaking up. I'm like, it's not everything needs a solo. Like a solo needs to be, to me, like have a purpose, right?
Right.
What are we trying to say here?
Right.
Yeah.
Which leads us to the new record, Perpetual Motion Machines, which comes out November 29th. Now, are you guys trying to capitalize on Black Friday?
Yeah.
That's what it was.
We did. Then we realized
people are going to be.
the manufacturing is going to be delayed. So now we're in December. So that plan got screwed up.
Okay.
We wanted to have a mad scramble, people like climbing over each other to get the record.
Walmart at 4
At
a.m.
Walmart.
And now for something completely different.
As far as being, initially we were trying to sort of work with John Paul's, sort of haiku type poetry. That's very, I don't know, I would say he's probably in the non-duality space a bit. It's a bit Alan Watts. And when we were working on the lyrics, eventually I just said, like, let me write what I feel. Because trying to like speak for someone else, it's just weird.
Right.
And anyway, this is our album. And so again, with the idea also of not having to be so cut and dry, black and white, specific. That's like, this is what we mean,
And I don't know how you felt, but I kind of felt we jumped on the surfboard on that one. Meaning like we didn't sit down and plan. I remember just kind of like checking out sounds and just going for it.
We were working to specific length, right?
Okay.
With scenes, right? And so that's definitely challenging. And my idea was always to sort of revisit this stuff and expand it. And, that still might happen. Maybe if we play any of this stuff live, maybe it will be expanded. But yeah, I mean, I think it's challenging when you're working to like a specific length, and some cuts, like something has to happen here. And I did study film scoring at UCLA back in the day. So, I mean, there's techniques you can use, like you kind of map out the scene and find the beat. You have to do a little bit of math. Okay, this is going to fit here. How do I hit this cue right here? So to where it's not happening on the and of the second, the half of the second beat.
Right.
When someone is speaking and they want music over that part,
You guys there?
you can't solo and do like Van Halen stuff. It distracts the audience from the film.
Yeah.
So you're there to serve the film, not ourselves.
And the wrong type of music in the wrong scene can blow, just ruin, if not the scene, the whole film. For me, I'm a huge nerd when it comes to that stuff.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yeah.
Totally
Good music supervision.
It's interesting because I think you have to kind of... Did I lose you guys for a second?
Nope.
Oh, you guys keep disappearing and you guys are both buffering.
It's magic.
Yeah. I think too, because it forces you, which is, I think most of the time the right call, it forces you to not go too maudlin and overly sentimental in a way. I mean, music's all about emotion to me. But at the same time, it can be too much or too obvious, maybe. So
yeah,
I think it kind of forces you to pull back a little bit and go like that there,
I'd love to hear you say that
good.
You have to serve the story, because that I remember reading a quote from Rob Reiner He goes, some of the best scenes I've ever shot have ended up on the cutting room floor because they don't serve the story.
What a heartbreak. Oh,
You know, and you
I
can have
get
the
that
best.
feeling.
Yeah, you can have the best piece of music in the world, but if it's not adding to, can't work.
Yeah.
You know?
It's painful, man. That's very painful.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. I want to ask you about Paradigm Lost, which was a particular favorite of mine.
Okay, you're back.
So I want to ask you about Paradigm Lost. In science and philosophy, a paradigm is a distinct set of concepts or thought patterns, including theories, research methods, postulates, and standards for what constitutes legitimate contributions to a field. So that's a paradigm by definition, finger quoting for those listening. Tell us about Paradigm Lost.
That's interesting. So the paradigm that we've been living under since roughly the Renaissance is that this idea that all there is matter. And while I'm very analytical myself, and I've never been very religious, we were talking about that the paradigm that reduces people to what's called an epiphenomenon, or like an illusory sort of reduces consciousness to an illusion.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first of all, I don't think that works for an artist generally. I think an artist generally wants to have more of a enchanted view of reality, maybe. But just the paradigm in this case was this idea that when you look at what existence is, like obviously we're experiencing something, and so to deny that, which not materialism generally, but eliminative materialism kind of does eliminate consciousness in a way, or experience as an epiphenomenon, to where, as like Richard Dawkins said, we're just lumbering meat robots.
Oh, Jesus.
Right? I'll stop it. You're turning me on. And it's just a very sort of harsh view. And I'm not gonna, I'm not a philosopher, I'm not a scientist, so I feel a little bit uncomfortable talking about it. But
Sure.
The paradigm that a lot of people seem to feel will be overthrown is that of, and I'm not saying in favor of idealism or in favor of panpsychism or anything like that, but it's the idea that you can just kind of tuck consciousness away, which is, after all, that's the thing through which we know anything is. And so a lot of people have been saying that, there's maybe something else coming down the pike, some other view of consciousness. And that would be the paradigm that would be kind of overthrown.
Interesting.
I remember when you came up with
and I think I probably stepped out of my lane a lot.
No lanes.
No.
We when we first came up with that title, Oscar, it was kind of a pun off of Paradise Lost by Milton.
I knew it.
So what sometimes Oscar and I, it's like a marriage. It's like we may come from different angles, but we have the same goal. And for me, it was like a return. The paradigm's a return back to yourself.
Okay.
In the 20, and I was talking to you earlier about this, Keith, about world domination and the feeling we had in the 20s.
Yeah.
And here I am at 45 at that time. I'm 49 now. And it's like, okay, all that glitz and glam didn't do anything for me spiritually. What do I need to do? And Jean Paul's work is so naked and connected to the earth. And the desert, which is all the pictures are all in the desert. That's like the worst kind of death or nature you want to be in.
Right.
Like, how do you grow life from that? And yet there is, right? So it's kind of cool. So it was a little bit of a play on that as well. Kind of going with what Oscar was saying.
Interesting. You've mentioned a couple times throughout that this documentary is gone, is not available to view, or
there was a conflict of what we had envisioned, and we kind of decided to kind of put this project together with new producers.
Okay.
And the visions were not the same. We have a more underground, not tell you everything you need to know, figure it out yourself. We'll do our best to provide the voyage musically. So it wasn't a good fit. It was a bit not. I'm not putting anyone down. It was just not our style.
Okay.
So we decided to just kind of go on our own path, and they released the movie last year, I think.
Okay.
And it was 23 minutes long. And when that happened, Oscar said, "Why don't we make a proper album?" If I remember the quotation properly. We took some of the songs that, like you said, they're just kind of seeds, and we expanded them, like Being. That's the last song on the album.
Yes, which features the Pink Floyd backup singer.
Yes, Durga.
Tell us about how did you meet Durga?
Our manager is friends with her, and it was a warm introduction. And she was on Giants with the title track "Witness the End of the World."
In the cities we covered with gold, dancing in all the ruins we sold, monuments to invention and our footprints etched in dust, traveling down an uncertain path, our empires covered in rust. Everything we once knew winding down, witness the end of the world, the center of our universe undone, witness the end of the
Can I be a little kid and share something with you?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Here's this guy who's like so we have a live album coming out hopefully next year, and Durga, Billy Sherwood's on it, Paul's on the video. We got a bassist and drummer together, and we put a show, I think 7, 8 songs, I can't remember. And we took
something like that.
So I want to say 7. So we took like Spark, which is off the Giants album, a portion of it, and we did Either Or from the debut. So we did this medley, right? So here comes Durga. And my only experience is music class in high school, right? Playing live with people. So here comes Durga. Oh, she's such a sweetheart. She shows up like 6 hours early, sits on the couch, doesn't bother anybody. Extremely professional, sweet, right? And then she comes on stage, and then I'm playing guitar, obviously. Oscar's on keyboards, and she starts wailing. And I got goosebumps, like just thunder hit me. Like it was the most, just like the most awesome feeling I've ever had. Like I was electrocuted for sure, right? Wow. So here comes that voice I'm used to hearing on records, just blasting my back. And I look at Oscar, and it was just like, if I die today, we did something in our miserable lives. You know? This moment of peace and mindfulness and just gratitude. It was just awesome.
Yeah, I remember when her voice came, because I was, facing away from her. And then when she started singing, my ass just went wide, like, holy shit.
The cars started together, accelerated to 50, and have held that speed ever since. The cars have traveled over 4 miles. Now, look. One dark car is out of fuel. So are the other dark cars. Every car without Platform 8 has run out of fuel and is slowing to a stop.
How do you guys see yourselves evolving over the next couple of years? What's the game plan? Do you have a game plan?
We want to play live.
Good.
So we we're putting it together. We're rehearsing. What's that?
No, I can't keep losing you guys.
So in 14 days, on the 25th, we are playing our first live show, and we haven't told anybody, so we can screw up. And then just to get our sea legs, and then
you just told everybody.
Yeah, but I have to say where. I mean, it's not like there's an internet where people can find out.
Where are you playing?
In Tarzana, California. Okay. Just playing live really improves musicianship. Mm-hmm. So, and also the dynamic.
You alluded to this earlier too. Perpetual Motion Machines is now not going to be out on November 29th. Do you have a release date for us?
It's only a few weeks later in December before.
So in time for Christmas or Hanukkah.
Yeah, we got the vinyl. It was a bit of a delay, but yeah, everything's going to work out.
And I want to circle back to the Nirvana thing just one more time, real quickly, because of those two bands, Nirvana and Pearl Jam. I'm a larger Pearl Jam fan. I'm sure I'll be lambasted over this, but I just think the songs are better. They speak more to me, I guess is a better way of saying that. The songs speak more to me. But again, driving home from Florida, that I was like, I get why Nirvana is Nirvana. You can make a direct correlation between Nevermind and that first Van Halen record. Things would not be the same afterwards.
Pearl Jam. So it's a really cool story. So that you shared. So this year, I went to Las Vegas with our manager for the Pearl Jam show. I had never seen them, and I don't think I've listened to one album in its entirety.
Really?
I was completely floored. Completely. Yeah. And Eddie Vedder kind of reminds me more of Jim Morrison as far as like the poetry and the depth to what he says. You feel it. And the Pearl Jam songs are eternal to me. Like they're not faddish, right?
No.
Nirvana had this thing when I was 14 that it just screamed for me. It represented me. It was kind of like poetic in the sense that he did and said whatever he wanted. Like Eddie Vedder's are stories, it's philosophy, it's poetry. You know, with Kurt, it was just like one line. And then another line that had nothing to do with the rest of this, like Lithium or, you know. But there was this attitude and anger, and I loved it. And with the teenage hormones raging at that time, it jived.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
No quarrel from me. Gentlemen, we are right at an hour. So what I'm going to do, say our goodbyes, and then I'm going to hit end recording and ask you to sit tight for just a second so I can upload everything.
You got it.
Okay.
That'll be a clever little part that I cut out. So Sepand, Oscar, I want to thank you guys for coming on and sharing your story. And I look forward to seeing you on the East Coast someday.
Yes, sir.
Oh, we look forward to it for sure.
That's going to be a goal.
All right, guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Many thanks to Sepand and Oscar for their time. Extra thanks to Anne Layton for making it happen.
This episode of Centre Stage was written and produced by Keith R. Higgins. The show was recorded at Thunderlove Studio, where it was engineered by
Daphne Morris,
with help from
Penetration,
edited by
Vic Titball,
with help from
Clem Fandango.
Our theme song is Cynical by Jaguar on Mars. You can stream Jaguar on Mars wherever you stream your favorite music. The songs you heard during this podcast were Being, Intermission 1, The Man Who Died 2 Times, Visionary, Paradigm Lost, and lastly, Witness the End of the World. You can stream Days Between Stations wherever you stream your favorite music.
original music by Mike Pellegrino.
Please remember to support independent artists.
If you like what you've heard, please remember to subscribe and leave us a rating. It helps other people find the podcast. Thanks for listening.
Grazie.
Bailey Leaf,
Rob Janicki, Mike Pellegrino, Farina Bella,
S.W. Loudon,
Michael Janicki, Peyton Janicki.
This show's executive producer is Lulu McGillicuddy and is in the loving memory of
Lucas Thunderlow.
And now, until we meet again next time, I remain as always obediently yours.
Abandoned Albums is a production of Paw Print Media.